when something is in a dark place and you drag it out into the light, that it takes away its power, and so I encourage you to do that. Don't keep things in dark places. Drag it out in the light. So I'll just tell you, I'm feeling nervous today. I'm just feeling nervous. So there, now it's out in the light, okay? Now, when somebody says they're nervous, then it makes you nervous, right? You think, oh, that guy's nervous. I'm kind of new to this. So thank you, Tiffany. That was, and all the musicians. That was pretty amazing. And I want to give a shout out today to Jonathan and Kelly Shedden, our missionaries here in the U.S. and back at Calvary today. God bless you guys and your family. We love you. You grew up. What happened? You were supposed to be like down here, but we're so excited to have you guys to worship with us today, and love you, and we always remember you in our prayers. And I don't just say that as a matter of that's from my heart. And can I just share, get a personal moment, one of those pastoral perks? Because I know we got all of us got stuff going on, and we got problems and issues and things like that happening in our lives, and we want to have people around us. So this is a little kind of not self-serving, but it's about my family. I have a son-in-law that I love. He's like a son to me, and he has a rare liver disease. And he's always really quiet about that. He's kind of cool about it. He doesn't. Most of you wouldn't know it or ever guess that because he doesn't display a lot of symptoms. But he's at that age, and he's been diagnosed long enough where it's becoming kind of a really serious thing. It always was, but it's kind of getting to that place. So he'll be leaving in a couple of days for Mayo Clinic. They are the ones who really know this. He's been in the hospital here at UT, and really awesome people, great hospital, but they've kind of reached the end of their knowledge. And actually, one of the doctors said, "Who is your doctor at Mayo?" And he told him, he goes, "Oh, that's the person who wrote the textbook that we study from." So they kind of know more about this. So if you would, like I say, just sort of, you think, well, I want you to pray about my things, and I understand, I get that this is, some of you can talk about it lunch, like, oh, I can't believe he took that to himself, but too bad I'm doing it. And you know what, just pray for him. Would you just pray, because we really believe and are coming quickly to this place where we think God wants to heal him. And that doesn't happen very much with this. So thank you for doing that. Now, I want to give you a little inside scoop on something Kevin shared earlier, and that's not taking anything away from you because you really, really are good. And I was listening to him rehearse this morning. There was a song he was doing at the piano, and I told one of our tech guys, I said, wow, listen to Kevin sing that. I said, that's really just it right in his, I just really love hearing him and, in his heart. And he said, oh, have you ever heard him do like this song from Phantom of the Opera? And I go, no. Trying to think of all our worship services, and he hadn't gotten to that one yet, and I'm pretty sure that one day we're going to be in here and Kevin's going to come with them and just Christine, and it's going to be such a blessing. It's just going to go all over us and just go, oh, thank you, Jesus. But that's not the one today. But I gotta tell you the real deal when he's like, I predicted the weather and chose these songs. Do you know how he did that? And I see these up here. I don't know who these are, but there are these devices. He has a cellular telephone. And on this cellular telephone, he has downloaded some applications. And one of those is we call them apps. And he has this app that's a weather app. No kidding. What he can do is he pulls that out. He gets on there, and he can get onto the Google or the intranet, the World Wide Web, and it will tell him what the weather is and what the weather's going to be. It's like magic, and he walks around like, I know the weather. No, he doesn't. He got it from the intranet. Yeah. So I just dropped out there. All right. So that's pretty cool technology, and isn't it funny how we get used to that? And we don't think anything about that. Well, I made a decision this week and I shared with the staff. I said, you know what? I'm going to step out into the empty place. I'm shutting my phone off. I'm not going to check the Twitter and the Facebook and the Instagram and and I said, I'm just going like cold turkey. And for the first, if you try this, pick a day when you will reach into your pocket or wherever 100 times you will do this. And even for those of us who say, I'm not addicted, I don't have a problem, there's no issue there. Oh yeah, when you're like, and then you start calming down and something else starts taking place, so it's really cool. Pardon, but feel free to shout out. Do what? You get 95, and you don't even have you got a flip phone, right? There you go. That's pretty good. That's pretty, if I'm 95 and I'm sitting right there, I'm happy, So I love you, brother. And the thing is, Kathy and I are that generation, and J.O.'s, he's seen a lot of changes, and some, probably more than any of us. But we've seen technology really ramp up and move so fast, and it gets faster, and the momentum builds like a train, and it's just crashing. So I was thinking about one of the first technological things that we thought was so cool, the coolest thing ever. How many of you had one of these? Oh. Even some of you that aren't this is a VCR. We got that, and you know what? I was trying to think. I don't even know how we got it because I was in seminary, I guess. We were broke all the time. I mean, we were so broke. We were so pitiful. But I don't know, somehow we got a VCR. So we were living in Collierville, Tennessee, and the wonderful thing about it is that with this device, you could, which was only about like this big, and we thought it was so small. Look at that little thing. You could record your favorite television shows, and that was so much fun. Shows like, all of our favorites here. We're going to just put them all up there at once. Okay, Magnum P.I., because I look a lot like, a lot of people say this, I look like Tom Selleck, so that was cool. Kathy and I's absolute favorite show, we never missed, Hill Street Blues. Anybody remember Hill Street Blues? I don't even remember it, but we thought that was cool. Saved by the Bell? You did. Yeah. Okay. Saved by the Bell. Full House. Miami Vice. If you go back and look at some of the old church directories, I'm dressed exactly like Don Johnson for like 3 years. Okay? And so some of you go back that far and worship at Calvary. I went with it. And then I went with you remember like the MC Hammer pants? I've still got a pair, and I wish I could fit in them because they are so cool. They're just like huge. So Miami Vice, just some of those shows that we could record. And the most wonderful part about recording those shows is, and this was like brand new, high-tech, for us, is that after you recorded it and you sit down and you're watching these blurry shows, you get to the commercial and you fast forward. You hit fast forward. There's a fast forward button, and you go right through. And for the first time, we had it on the advertisers. Because they always kind of pushing this on us, and like you're going to watch our show, then you got to watch our commercial. We got set free. We didn't have to watch their commercials anymore. You know what? We still have that ability, whether you use a DVR or just through your provider, like on demand, whatever your thing is. You can fast forward through things and just get to the heart of what it is. And I use that as a little backstory today because I think that's really what God has done in history at different points and with people. And I believe that's what He wants to do in my life and in your life. He has fast-forwarded me this week through some things. And I just think, Lord, how can you just take us so quickly from one point to the other? And the Lord's like, that's what I got to do. This is where we are, and I'm gonna just take you from that. For instance, there was a period of time we call, those of us who kind of read Scripture and the Bible, the Old Testament, the Old Covenant of God was in place, and it was like thousands of years. This is the way things operated, and then God was moving us through. And when you read that, like if you read Judges or Genesis, and you just think like, oh, Lord, you're just moving in slow motion. These people it takes them forever to get it. And they get this idea, and they repent, and they live, and then they do it all over again. You think, oh, Lord, so there's this Old Testament period where it just seems like you're going really slow in a lot of ways. And then there's this New Testament period where Jesus comes on the scene, and the pace really picks up, and things happen incredibly fast in just these short periods of time. Now, between that were these 400 years of silence. And we call that the intertestament period. It's between these two times. There's a lot of activity. It's just like we went into a pause. Everything just seemed quiet because God is behind the scenes and he's setting the stage and the pace is about to change. And then Jesus is born and comes on the scene. And then he introduces the new life that we can have in him. And all the concepts are just radically altered, and all these truths that he's built over all these years and these decades and time, it begins to make sense because he said, you've heard it said, or it is written, and he gives light to that and fullness, and he illuminates all these truths through himself. And he gathers around himself these men and women who are going to take this message, internalize it, and then be the ones to share it and push it forward. Now, the crazy thing about that, you think, okay, there's all these thousands of years, of teaching and life and examples and stories and all this. Then there's these 400 years of quietness. And then everything just bursts, forth into the light with Jesus and his ministry. And you know how long that ministry was? About 3 years. In 3 years, these disciples get so much information and experience and application of truth from Jesus, they are able then to be so empowered that they go out and they literally change the whole world. History just goes, off in this brand new direction, and the reference point is moved. Everything just explodes. And all they had, it's like 3 years of exposure and teaching. You get the idea that God did an incredible amount in this short, this amazingly tiny little piece of time, a weekend, it was just this short time. Because that's what God does sometimes. And I stepped in this morning, and all week I've just been praying about this idea that you would accept the concept that God maybe wants to do something different and hit a fast forward button in your life. And he may be ready to do in this season where you are. And you may be like a high school student or college, and you're headed toward the end of this term, and you're kind of wrapping that up. You may be a business person or a homemaker, or whatever it is. That would you give, just in this moment, would you lean into saying, yes, God, if you want to fast forward me to the next place. And there's nothing wrong with going through a year-long Bible study or being in a community group, and you say, okay, over the next 6 years, we're going to read this book together. That's because God pours into my life, and he teaches me that way. But what today is about, and what I feel like, is that God wants to do something big and significant and deep in your life, and he's going to do it in a shorter amount of time. That's the premise. And so I want to illustrate that with you today, because what it's all about is coming down to the question, to the fact, can God be trusted? How do I trust him, and how does that work? It's not how much information do I have in my head, have I memorized all the books of the Bible, and can I name the disciples and the 10 Commandments, and and I've built up this repertoire of, I know all about that. It's kind of put that over to the side for the rest of our time this morning. Because the real issue beneath that is, God, can I trust you? And another word for trust would be faith. God, can I faith you? Are you going to be there? So what God does is that he brings where this relationship with him had been broken really all the way back in Genesis. And we had said, God, we don't trust you. We think you're holding back on us. We think we could do it better than you. We think I can manage my life. I can make better choices. I think you're not giving me everything I could have. And so I'm going to use my ways, and I'm going to figure out how I can do that. I just don't trust you. I don't trust you. And we start, leaning into that, and God says, I want to heal that relationship that was broken, and I want to heal you through acts of trust. Get this. You're healing from, that place and all the areas of your life where you're not trusting him right now, and you're kind of making it happen on your own, whether it's, Lord, you don't seem to be bringing me a boyfriend, so you know what, I'm going to go get one myself. Thank you very much, I can take it from here. Or, Lord, I'm not really comfortable, so I'm just going to have to medicate myself with drink or pill, whatever it is. I don't know what your stuff is, but I know this, that if you would begin to trust the Lord in this moment and say, Lord, I'm going to stop trying to do that, and I want you to heal the broken relationship I have with you through acts of trust. I'm going to step into each one of those, because that's the essence of faith. That's what this journey is really all about. Now, he will use a lot of different things in our life to grow our trust and our awareness of him and our confidence of him, and he will use Bible study, and he will use worship, and today's worship's just been incredible, and I think, oh God, you just refresh my heart every time I step in this room. But everybody I know whose faith is really growing seem to have this one thing in common. They are involved in ministry to other people. Some of you wondering, God, why am I not getting to the next place? Why am I not growing? I don't sense you. I'm reading my Bible. I'm having my closet time, and I go to church. Nothing seems to be happening. Here's what I think's missing is ministry to others. That's the way God flows in and touches and changes our lives in countless ways, by being exposed to real people. Now, when I say that, a lot of us in this room have experienced where you felt a tug in your heart towards something. There's a mission opportunity, or, a people group, or somebody in your neighborhood that you walk past, and you kind of feel, or somebody in this room, you think, I feel something there, and there's this nudge, this in our hearts, and we become aware of a need in a place, a specific area, whatever. And maybe you do like me, and you think, well, I want to do that, but I don't think I'm the guy. I'm not prepared for it. I don't have the resources. Somebody told me a couple of days ago, there's this guy, and he's out there, and he needs several $1,000s. And what is my first thought? I don't have several $1,000. I'm off the hook. So I can take myself out of the picture. What I'm talking about today is when you say, I'm not equipped, I'm not experienced, I don't know how to do that, I don't know what to do, I want you to pull yourself back into the picture. Even if those things are true, and just go with the fact, I feel drawn to this. And maybe God's leading me. And Lord, I don't think I can do this, but you begin to see how God will do things in you and through you that become a big part of your own story. So that tension, and I feel this too, I feel it all the time, that fear can create this tug of war in your heart and your mind with God, about a place of ministry. Our church is connected to a ministry called The Sight, and there's someone who wanted to get involved with that and said, you know what, those are not my issues. I've never struggled with same-sex attraction, with homosexuality, with any of that. I think that's kind of not my thing. My thing's over here, and I've got some other stuff, but I really feel like I just love these people who are struggling, and I just want to do something, want to help them, let them know how much you're loved and cared for, and this is really scary because I don't know anything about it. I don't understand anything about it. I said, wow, I really think God's pulling you into that. So the bigger the thing is that God may want to use you outside of your comfortable place that you're in to grow and build your trust. Now, he's going to use you in the ministry, but really what's going on is that he's inviting you away from that, and it's probably something you're not skillful at or you don't have information about or any of that. So if you hadn't had that wrestling match and you're sincere about your faith, you're going to, okay? That's going to happen. You will experience that. Now, what I'd like to do is to use this event. There's a historical event, a couple of things kind of connected, where God did exactly that in the lives of some people around him. We call them his disciples, his followers at that time, which we're kind of a part of that now. And he hit the fast forward button, and he says, okay, because leading up to this event, he had been teaching. He'd been teaching a lot through parables, and he'd say, there was a man, and he would tell these stories, and he'd teach and say, here's the application. So he's teaching. And most of you in this room, some of you haven't, but a lot of you in this room, you have been taught to death. I mean, you know so much, and that's your safe place. You've been to church, or you've maybe even grown up in it, and God's like, okay, now I'm going to hit the fast forward button. And he said, what he does in these guys' lives, he hits the fast forward button, he takes all that teaching, and he puts it into action. And that happens in these really cool ways, really amazing ways, in Matthew chapter 14. And I'll give you an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. Jesus has been rejected in his hometown, and he's at this place where he's not being honored, and he's the consensus is we don't know about this guy, and then this terrible thing happens right in the middle of the story, and this is a very familiar story as we get into it. And I'll just read for you verse 13. Now, this is Matthew chapter 14. When Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there into a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot into the towns, from the towns. Now, when Jesus heard what? Here's what had happened. Jesus' cousin, or second cousin, his cousin John, who was a powerful guy and a godly man, had been arrested and put to death by Herod. Herod arrested John because John just kept preaching about Herod. Herod was messed up, okay? Herod had so many issues. He was just this egomaniac, and he had married his sister, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that's probably one of the lesser weird things he did, but he married. So John, who's just so bold, he picks up on that, and he just hates the fact that he did that, and it's just so inappropriate and just so wrong, off the charts, illegal marriage. But Herod's like, hey, I can do whatever I want to do because I'm Herod. So he marries his sister. Well, John he uses it for a sermon illustration. And he just says it everywhere he goes. He's like, for instance, like Herod, and it's so embarrassing to Herod's wife. She's just humiliated that this keeps going on. Herod is embarrassed. He doesn't like it. So, simple solution, he's got the ability and the power. So he arrests John, he puts him in jail, and then he beheads him. That ought to do it. I mean, talk about overkill, literally. That's Jesus' cousin. So there's this death in the family, and Jesus is grieving just like we would be, and he knows the bigger picture, but he just needs some time. He just needs to step back, and I need to think about this, I need to pray, and we all have that, and Jesus had that. So he goes away. He wanted some time alone, but it didn't work out so good, because in the end of verse 13, it says, but the crowds. But the crowds. Do you know how that feels? Those days when you're maybe trying to get something done, or you just need some space. You just need some space. You need to be quiet. You need to pray. You need to walk. But the crowds, the phones, the emails, the people, the expectations, your employer, you've got a test tomorrow. You think, oh, this paper's not done, and I've got clients, and it's the crowds. We all know that. So here he is. Jesus, the crowds hear that Jesus is heading down to the lake to be by himself. He just wants to walk on the shoreline. And I'm kind of like that. That's kind of the way I process things sometimes. I just need to walk and think about this. So the crowds come, and they're so much like your crowds. Hey, we know he's grieving, and we know this is not a good time. We're so sorry. I know it's late. I didn't mean to call so late, but they do it anyway. And he says, I'm sorry. I know it's really early. I know you're on your way to, but just going to take a minute. I had this need, this is my son. He needs healing. Could you just real quick do the healing thing? And then, we're out of here. Thank you so much. So I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to bother you. But the crowds, we need. You ever see What About Bob? I need. That's a great movie. You need to go watch that. So in verse 14, it says this. In verse 14, it says, but when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd. It's like everybody had the same idea. It's not just one person. It's like, oh, you found Jesus too? And here's the thing I love about Jesus. He had compassion on them. In spite of his own weariness and his broken heart and all the things, he saw them and he healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place. We're way out here in the middle of nowhere. The day is over. Send the crowds away to go into the village and buy some food for themselves. So these guys have followed Jesus. They've been with him all day. You ever been on one of those mission trips? You're out there all day and you don't do lunch. You've got peanut butter crackers, or you've got a Cliff Bar, or if you're Joe Drummer, you've got Pop-Tarts. That's Joe's go-to survival food for all mission trips, no matter where you are. I got Pop-Tarts. I don't think that can sustain life. But then they start sounding good. You start looking at your energy bar thinking, this tastes like cardboard. I want one of Joe's Pop-Tarts, So you try to get in on that. Well, they're so tired. Everybody's tired. Jesus has been healing all day. And I want you to think about this. Maybe you hadn't thought about this because the crowds are so hungry. They're so worn out. Jesus has been at the front of this the whole day. Don't you think he's kind of tired too? He's hungry. And the disciples, the leaders and organizers are, okay, we need our next 100 people. We need, Peter, if you could bring those guys around this way. And, they're doing this all day. So what they say to Jesus is like, these people are really hungry. They need to get something to eat. And us too. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you go down to the Gulf, and you're going to drive down to the beach, or you go over to the coast. There's the coast. And you're halfway there or two-thirds of the way there, and you're driving through nowhere, Georgia, or nowhere, Alabama, and it's just nothing, and you're bored and you're tired, and you're Dad, we're hungry. Dad, we're hungry. And it never hit you as a 10-year-old, your dad's hungry too. He's tired. He's actually having to drive the car while you're back there playing, whatever it is on your cellular phone connected to the intranet. You're watching videos, and all of a sudden you're bored and you're tired. Nobody thinks that the disciples are tired too. They're tired. So they say, just send everybody away. We're out here. There's really there's not a Burger King, a McDonald's, a Chick-fil-A for miles. There's no exits, not even a Cracker Barrel. So this is where the story gets really, really relevant. In verse 16, Jesus says, you don't need to send them away. You give them something to eat. And can you imagine they're all like, Jesus doesn't get it. You don't need to send them away. And you ever heard your parent or a teacher or somebody just say something and you think, do I correct them? Do I point out the obvious to them? Jesus is really not. He says, you feed them. But they say back to him, and here's the tension, okay? Here's the tension in verse 17. They say to him, well, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that's really. But we only have 5 loaves of bread, and we got 2 fish. In my imagination, I've always thought of like 2 fish. I think, okay, let's be really generous, and let's say they are huge fish. We've only got these 2 fish. There's still just 2 fish is all they have. And as a believer, as a follower, this is going to be the tension. You're going to sense there's a need in somebody's life that needs to be met. There's a ministry opportunity. There's something in your heart that wants to get involved. It's not like the disciples didn't care about them. I mean, they're hungry too. And you sense this nudge from the Lord saying, okay, I want you to meet that need. I want you to do it. And we go, oh, no, Lord. I am a prayer warrior. That is my ministry. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to really pray. And how many times have you told a friend or a minister or somebody, we're going to be praying for you about that. And sometimes that's all God calls you to do, and that's legit. I'm just going to be praying for you. And then sometimes you walk away, and the Lord's like, you're going to what? Why don't you reach in your wallet and give the guy a $20 bill? Oh, Lord, I'm just, really not my ministry. It's not my gifting. It's not my spiritual gift. I have the gift of criticism. And Lord, I could tell this guy, oh, if you would only do this, maybe, it would work out. And we go, no, I just pray about that, and God will bring the right people. And God just keeps, real subtly saying, I want you to do it. I want you to do it. And so you picture yourself there, and you begin to feel this awareness of how much you don't know, or how ill-prepared you are, or how limited your resources are. And even though your heart's wishing, boy, I wish I had an extra $1,000. I could take care of that. Or I wish I had the time. I wish I could go. I wish I could do this. But you know what? I hadn't been to seminary. I don't know scriptures, and I've never counseled anybody, and I may mess this up. I don't have a lot of time. I'm really busy. And that's what we start filling in that gap with. But, and some of that's real, but when it's not just about a guilty feeling, when it's God's voice calling, saying, I want you to get involved, that's a game changer. But they do, what we all do in verse 17 when they say we've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. And the funny thing about this that hit me the other day when I was thinking about this is they make this excuse. Same thing we do. They make an excuse with who standing right there? Jesus. And they had heard all these teaching, they'd seen all these miracles, and they're like, oh, Lord, we really love to do it, but, we don't have anything. And they were saying that. I mean, if I'm standing next to Jesus, I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. We got Jesus. We got Jesus here. What do you want to do, Lord? And it just hit me as funny. Obviously, it doesn't hit you quite as funny. But anyway, I'm thinking that's Jesus. Anyway, I'm just like, okay, we got this because we got Jesus. It's kind of like that guy on your softball team that can hit it way over, and he comes up to bat, and you're going, yeah, we're down by 4, but look who's coming up. It's like we got Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to quit doing that because I'm not getting any response from you. But they're like, we don't have the resources. We're not equipped. You got the wrong guys. So in verse 18, love this. Jesus says, bring them here to me. All we've got is this bread and fish. Jesus says, why don't you bring that to me? And he's about to show them and teach them something, and he's about to show you and me something that he wants to teach all of us. Here's a spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you the whole message in just a sentence, and then if you want to rush out and beat us all to the restaurant, then you're free to slip out. We're going to watch you and judge you if you do. But here's what Jesus is teaching us. Just bring me what you have. What do you got? Bring me that. That's all. You see, I thought he was asking me to do something I couldn't do, or to bring him something I didn't have, and I felt all stressed about that because I thought that's what faith is doing this magical big thing outside of myself, and God's going to say, well, I want you to fly. I want you to turn invisible. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that, and now I feel guilty like he never asks you to do that stuff. He just says, okay, bring me what you have. But God, I didn't finish college. I actually didn't even graduate high school. And okay, well, how far did you get? 8th grade. I can work with an 8th grader. Bring me that. Lord, I hardly know the Bible. And this was one of mine when I was asked to teach early on in my ministry. They gave me 5 11-year-old boys. I was scared to death, I looked at those boys and I thought, I got nothing. And I started telling them Bible stories. Hey guys, I'm going to tell you a story today, and it's about there was a giant, and his name was Goliath. And there was this, and they're like, we heard this. You heard this one? Yeah, we know that story. Oh. Okay, there's this other story, and it's about this guy named Noah, and we heard that one too. I mean, I was so intimidated by these 5, 11-year-old boys because I didn't know anything, I didn't know anything except a few stories. Well, Lord, I really don't have a lot of time. How much time do you have? I work all day and I got my family. Well, I notice you check your Facebook a lot and you watch a lot of TV and you're on Netflix. Could you maybe give me some of that? Well, yeah, okay, just bring me that. That'll work. I can work with that. God, they're going to ask a lot of questions, and I get really nervous, and I don't know the answers to all these questions. Lord, just bring me, I have issues with flying, and I'm not really good with children or crowds or my past. God, you and I are the only ones who know everything I've done. I think I'm disqualified, and I'm so flawed, and what am I going to, I feel like such a hypocrite, and what am I going to, he goes, that's all right, you're just scared. Just bring me that. Just bring me what you have. That's all you got to do. So here's what they do. In verse 19, it says, then he ordered the crowds to sit on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish. You ready? He looked up into heaven, he said a blessing, then he broke the loaves, and here it is. He gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. Picture that. I mean, I'm kind of a visualizer, so I'm picturing Jesus standing there, and the disciples are standing there in front of Jesus. They're like the first row. They're like in the orchestra section, and behind them, there are 5,000 men, probably 5,000 women and children. There's like 10,000 people behind him, and they're all hungry, and Jesus is standing there, and he can see everybody. Jesus sees them all. And the disciples, all they can see is Jesus. They're just looking at Jesus. And you got to stop looking at the crowd. You got to stop looking at the 5,000. You got to stop thinking about that and just keep looking at Jesus. Just keep your eyes on Jesus. Jesus. So they're looking at Jesus, and they're scared to death. And can you imagine, like, are they still there? Yeah, they're all still there. They're kind of looking over their shoulders thinking, did they leave? Did they go away yet? No, they're still there. But they look at Jesus, and Jesus starts distributing this, and they start receiving it, and this is where things get really, really cool. Jesus just gives back to them what they handed to him. Jesus just gives back to them what they handed to him. They had surrendered this to Jesus, and he just gives it back to them. I want you to think about that. Once he handed them the bread and the fish, this is so beautiful, they just did what they knew how to do. Because that's all they could do. They didn't know how to feed 5,000 people. Okay, now go feed 5,000 people. That's not what he told them to do. You know what they knew how to do? Standing there with this bread and this fish, I know how to turn around, and I know how to hand this. I know how to give this. That's really all I know how to do. Their first thought must have looked at it and said, oh, the number 4 combo, the fish and bread meal. Thank you. This is enough for me. I mean, for me, I would have been tempted just for a second to think, well, if I were strong and well-fed, then I could work better and take care of these people, just for a second there. And Jesus gives them all this back. They did what they know how to do, just simply turn around. And verse 19 it says, then he ordered the crowds to sit down in the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he blesses it. And then at the end of that sentence, it says, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. They didn't try to do God's part. They didn't try to understand it. They just acted obediently. And a lot of us, you're trying to do, everything. You're trying to do your boss's part. That's not your job. Do your job. You're trying to think for your dad, and say, well, my dad would just do that. Not your job. You're not dad. You're you. Just do your stuff. You could apply that in every kind of way you can think about. They just did, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do that. And you know what? That's all God's ever going to ask you to do. That's all you could just volunteer. Just say yes. Just step outside of your comfortable place and, just put your excuses down about why you're not ready and why you're not good enough and all of that, because your responsibility, my responsibility is always just really, really simple. Maybe to know the simplicity is right there in front of you, because I always try to make it something bigger than it is. Well, if I do that, then I'll have to do this, and I start going on, and the Lord's like, stop it. Just all I want you to do, you just do what you know how to do and trust your Heavenly Father to do what He knows how to do. Because that tension and that fear that you feel, that anxiety and all of that, you know what that is? That's your trust muscle. That's your faith. Because God can't teach you that part just by reading, the Bible and studying it and listening to podcasts and watching videos of your favorite preachers. And that's wonderful. I do that. I love that. Listening to, he says, okay, you know what? To really get you to work out, I can't let you just sit and look into the gym, or drive past it. Did you work out today? No, but I drove past the gym and I saw all those people in there, and then I drove and I sat over at Lakeshore, the walking, the Greenway, and I looked at that for a little while and came home, and I really feel pretty good, No, you kind of got to get out of the car and stretch and put your shoes on and walk it and run it and get in the gym, and that's what God's doing. He's fast-forwarding you into a place where He says, okay, we're going to take all that, and now I'm going to show you how to build your faith. There's no shortcuts. There's no other way to do it. Just do it. Those advertisements where you wear this belt, you seen that one in the magazines, and it's got those things, what do you call those? It's kind of like a defibrillator, like clear, and we have one of those now, and the staff wanted to do it on Joe. Joe's our scapegoat today, and we always say, Joe, lie down. We're gonna test these things. No, I'm not gonna do. Yeah, let us do it, please. Let us do it. Never would, but. Those things, and you wear them, and you just sit and watch TV, and they go like this, and the next day you're thin and beautiful and strong, and it's like, you know what? No, you push back on the table, and you go to the gym, and this is what God's doing. He's building you up. He's giving you strength. He's giving you, because the issue is not so, it is that ministry, but when you think about it, God could do that ministry any way He wanted to do it. He could totally leave you out of the loop and say, you know what, 5,000 people hungry? Presto. Here's, this many, I'm gonna give them this many Chick-fil-A sandwiches or this, and all of a sudden it's but He pulls you in because you're what He's working on. It's God's way. The issue is to grow your capacity and the ability of your faith. Because these people that He's doing this with, in just a little while, Jesus isn't going to be physically there anymore. They're going to look around and go, we're the guys, it's on us, we're really not ready, And they weren't, but He knew, if I can get you in shape, in your spirit, it's going to have a direct impact and a bearing on not only your intimacy with the Lord, but in your faith, your ability, you're going to be able to do the next thing. And you know what the next thing always was after that? What they knew how to do? With each event, and I was going to read the next story to you, but I'm going to stop with this, and we'll talk about that some other time. Because you're always going to find somebody who said, Lord, I really can't do this. In fact, when I look back at church history, when I look back in your lives and a lot of the people I know, it's the same, it works the same way every single time. There's this need. Oh, Lord, I'm just feeling so drawn to that, and I'm kind of feeling like I want to do this, but there are things that God's already built into your life, and He's like, you already know, you know how to drive a van? Yeah, I know how to drive a van. I can work with that. You speak English? Pretty good. It's kind of sort of southern Tennessee English, but you know what? That's okay. I can work with that. Do you know how to, and God just and there's this incredible list of things. God says, wow, I've got all of this that you're already good at. This is a skill set. If you just faith me. And every single time in missions, in churches, organizations, you read these biographies of all these great people, you look for it. Every single time it's a need, an opportunity, and somebody going, I can't do that. You go all the way back to some of our heroes in Scripture, Moses or Abraham or Noah. You think of all those people, the Apostle Paul and Peter, this weakling named Peter, and he becomes this giant of this godly man. All of them started off going, I can't really do that. God's like, I know what you can't do and you can, so I'm just going to ask you what I know you can do. So it's kind of a comfortable place. And then the Lord, at every story I read, every event I see, that's the way it happened. And what God is doing in those people's lives and what he's going to do in your life, if you will say yes, whatever that first thing is, that's the trigger. That's the initiating thing. You just say, yes, Lord, you want me to do this? Okay, I can do that. And then watch what happens from there as your story unfolds. These beautiful, amazing, powerful things begin to take place in your life. And the funny thing, the crazy thing about this is that you look back one day and because it will happen. I promise. It's just going to be all these things. You'll never look back and go, yeah, then I did this and I did that. You're going to be so amazed and go, okay, you don't know me. I am not that person. I don't know, but God did it. God did it. He gets all the glory. Your faith is built. The needs start getting met, and these wonderful things happen. That's what I want you to experience. That's what I want to experience. So here's this moment, and here's this time in the show, where you can fast forward. You can keep plodding along, and maybe you'll eventually get there, or one day you're going to be in J.O.'s age and look back at your life and go, man, I just really didn't do a lot, and I have regrets. I have a lot of regrets. Or you can look back and say, what a wild ride, and I didn't have to do anything outside of my abilities. I just kept saying yes to the things I knew how to do, and the Lord kept moving me along, and what a beautiful thing. What a fun adventure it's been. Would you do that? What is the next thing? Maybe already God's starting to show you a ministry or an opportunity, maybe something here at Calvary. Every good thing you've ever seen happen at Calvary is because somebody said yes to something they knew how to do. Yeah, I can do that. I know how to do that. Yeah, why don't I come up and I'll do that. That's how it goes forward. That's how it works. What is your next yes? Would you stand?